There are many that will dispute the 5 points of Calvinism and the acrostic TULIP. The T stands for total depravity. The U stands for unconditional election. The L stands for limited atonement. And of course the I is irresistible grace. The P is perseverance of the saints. Now starting with a T, total depravity, there's some verses that point to it. We have Mark 7:21 and Jeremiah 17:9 and Ephesians 2:15, etc. Now, when someone hears the term, quote, total depravity, end quote, they picture in their head an axe murderer. It sounds like a rather harsh way of putting it. So I feel it's something more like radical corruption. Fits the facts better. Mankind is corrupted all the way to his core, or deep down in his heart. And when the Bible uses the term heart, it means deep in man's inner core. And in fact, the core of man, the word core itself, has the same roots as cardia, or heart in Greek. But since the fall of man in the Garden of Paradise, man has been tainted by sin. He has this deep down inner selfishness. We sin because we are sinners. We're not sinners because we sin. So the total depravity is correct. It is a fact. Unconditional election. Now you got Romans 9:11, Ephesians 1, verses 4 and 8. And there's nothing that we can do that's going to change what God does as far as election goes, in choosing who he is going to save. We don't know all of his doings. We can't see the end from the beginning. We're limited. No, we don't work for salvation. So the unconditional election is true. There's much more to say about it, but this short clip is not exhaustive. Just going through it fairly briefly. Limited atonement, the L of the acrostic. You know, though the sacrifice of Jesus was sufficient to cover all sins for all time, it still will not save everyone. The Bible doesn't teach universalism. One still has to come to Christ in faith. So therefore there is limited atonement. You know, the sacrifice of Christ covers all sins, but someone has to come to Christ before the work of Christ can atone for that person. Limited atonement is true. Irresistible grace. This is a little more difficult. The sinner, if called and awakened by God and quickened, desires the things for God. He desires to come to God. He has an interest in God. He's awakened. He's regenerated. Otherwise, he won't come to God. Now, in John 6:44, no one can come to Christ unless the Father draws him. We choose what we desire the most. We have freedom of choice, free will. But even with free will, our choices are still determined by our desires. So therefore the question, is free will true or is determinism true? Well, they're both true. We're free to choose what we desire the most. And in fact, in order to have free will, we'd have to be able to do that. But it's determined based on our desires. The non-Christian, the non-regenerate person will not choose the things of God because he does not desire them. God has to awaken the Christian. And I would suggest reading the book of Ephesians on this one. So, irresistible grace is true. Now looking at the P in the acrostic, perseverance of the saints. God does not commit spiritual abortions. If God starts a process, he finishes it. He's a perfect being. And the Bible says that God is the author and finisher of our faith. He starts a process and finishes it off. And you can find the Ordo Salutis, as it is sometimes called, in Romans chapter 8. So the perseverance of the saints is correct. Once saved, always saved. Now this doesn't mean that we are perfect. No, there's a Christian struggle that goes on. But the non-Christian does not have that same struggle. The Christian is awakened. He has this new spiritual component. But he also still has his flesh nature too. So there's a struggle. So I feel that one can argue plainly that perseverance of the saints is correct, because if God stopped the process or let it go or dropped it, how would that reflect upon his perfection? No, God starts a process and he finishes it. But anyways, I find that the TULIP is actually correct. Perhaps I'll get into it more deeply later. But anyways, thank you for listening once again. I'm tired. I'm going to take a nap for a few hours. Good day.